Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So I went to a relative's house, got to watch some movies, got to watch this movie, which was good. My phone, I forgot to charge it while I was watching, so my phone was at 5%, and I was like writing my notes on my phone, or it's at 5%, so this will be at least like shorter than an hour. So general thoughts. I really liked this. I think I've only seen like bits and pieces of this movie because when I got to like around the end of it, when they're like trying to evacuate all the people and like actually trying to fight Ultron, it looked really familiar. So I think I'd seen like the end of this movie, but I hadn't seen anything before that. But I also didn't like 100% remember it, and that was good. And it's kind of better since I'm semi like watching these in orders. It kind of helps with that. I liked this a lot. I will say, because I think at this point, at the time I'm recording is like Avengers Doomsday isn't out yet. I don't know when it's coming out. I guess it means I'm like done with the Avengers movies, or at least the ones that at least have like Avengers in the title, sets 4 of them. This one I could say I liked better than the first Avengers movie. I just mean like personal enjoyment wise, really. I feel like the first one was better, but this one I enjoyed more, if that makes sense. But I mean, Infinity War and Endgame I think were better than both like the first Avengers and this one. I think out of all 4 of them, Infinity War was probably my favorite, honestly. Just kind of felt the most hype. But yeah, this was good. I'm glad I got to finally see it. I think there was like some things I sort of knew, but not really much of it. So I'm just gonna hop right into my notes. It's cool that you get to see the Avengers fighting at the start. They're fighting in this like snowy forest area, and that fight kind of like goes on for a while, where they're basically trying to find Loki's scepter. But you get a lot of cool stuff happening there, like Captain America just like running people over with a motorcycle. And I like that the characters have like a bit of banter and stuff between them as they're like beating up people, where they're talking on their comms, like a joke that ends up being a like continues for like part of the movie is like a character cursing and Steve just shouting out like language or whatever. That was kind of funny to me. Where they're at this like Hydra base, so they're beating up all these people, and we get 2 new characters. We get Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, and I was trying to remember why I didn't remember Quicksilver in these, and then I remembered that he like dies in this one, so then he isn't in the others, but then his sister Wanda, ends up being an important character. I'm so used to her from like, watching Infinity War and Endgame that I forgot this was like the movie where she originally came from. It's kind of weird for me seeing Quicksilver though, because when I think of the name, I always think of the version of him from the X-Men movies from the 2000s and not like the specific one, so it was kind of throwing me off a bit. The location they're fighting in, I don't remember where it is, but it's like this winter forest area. That was pretty cool. And then they have this thing where Black Widow's like the only one that can like get Hulk to like not be in like, to get Bruce not to be in like the Hulk form anymore. I don't really know what to refer to that is, but I guess it's like a thing she figures out between movies. They have like a couple of scenes together, the 2 of them, and then she kisses him at the end, so then it makes her dying in Endgame feel worse. It even makes like the ending of this movie feel worse too, where Hulk, because I was kind of curious because I knew that the next movie I was going to watch was Thor Ragnarok, where Thor is in Asgard, I think, and because it's about like the destruction of Asgard, and I remember Hulk is also there, and I never understood that, but it's because he gets put in this like stealth plane or whatever at the end. So I'm assuming that's where it goes, actually, because the next movie I have to watch is Thor Ragnarok, so I guess I'll see how that ends up continuing. Oh yeah, speaking of future stuff, the end credits scene, I think I've actually seen the end credits scene of like Thanos getting the Infinity Gauntlet and being like, fine, I'll do it myself. So I probably caught like the last 20 minutes of this movie, maybe. It feels like one of those things I'd probably end up seeing a little bit of it like my grandma's house or something. But I like that with this again, because I'm used to mostly Scarlet Witch in like Infinity War and Endgame, where she's fighting against the Avengers for most of this one. You get to see her do all these like mind hallucinations on people. That was pretty cool to see more of that kind of extent of her abilities, where there's all these like dream sequences and stuff the characters have about their past. I find Thor's interesting, where it turns out it's like this warning about like the Infinity Stones, and I think something related to like something bad happening to Asgard, which I think has to do with like the next Thor movie or something. So then this is the one where they have Avengers Tower, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't remember that being a thing in the first one where they like form the Avengers, but then I think it ends up getting destroyed or something, and then they have to have like a new location that isn't as cool because it's not a tower at the end of this movie, and I was like, damn, I liked the concept of Avengers Tower. So this movie's kind of interesting to me, and it like starts from them finding like computer intelligence, like artificial intelligence inside of Loki's staff, which that part I still didn't really understand, but then they end up creating, or like Bruce and Tony end up creating like Ultron, and then ends up with this thing where he like becomes online and freaks out, and his whole purpose is to like be a kind of artificial peacekeeper, but then kind of freaks out a bit of like humanity always being at war and whatnot, and he's like, all right, I gotta kill the Avengers. I think he's a pretty cool character. I found him surprisingly funny. I wouldn't have expected that out of the like, I don't know, robot character that wants to kill off humanity, but I think he was entertaining as a character because of that. There's a part when the Avengers, they're having a party inside of the Avengers Tower. I really liked that because it's kind of nice to see these characters when they're not like having to fight people and being on missions, and they just get to chill for a bit, where I think they all end up getting drunk at a party, including what I thought was a Stan Lee cameo where he ends up wanting to try this alcohol that Thor brings that's like not meant for mortals, and then ends up really, really drunk from it or whatever. That was kind of funny. Or they have this thing where the characters end up getting like a little bit tipsy, and they're all trying to lift Thor's hammer, even Tony using the like Iron Man glove, and none of them can do it. It was kind of interesting, one part, with having the hindsight of like the next couple movies where Steve is trying to lift it up and Thor looks like visibly surprised because he can't do it, thinking like, this would, the person that's Captain America would probably be the one that's the most worthy. So then it's kind of nice thinking about how like an Endgame he can finally lift it and use it. But they do have another character that's able to use it in this one. It's just funny to me because like none of the other Avengers besides Thor can use it, but then like literally as soon as Vision's born, he's able to lift the hammer immediately. I find that interesting about his character. And then the characters get into an argument about like having the creation of Ultron at all once it's kind of revealed he's evil. I thought they were, I thought it was good that they were like calling out Tony on that, of like, hey, you made this creation without like really knowing what you were doing and stuff. And actually, no, that's the later part of my notes. Never mind. And then why am I stumbling over my words? Sorry. I think seeing my phone at the 4% thing is making me like a little anxious because I can't plug it in this room right now. There's a line, I think it was from Infinity War. It has to be either from Infinity War or Endgame, but I think it's Infinity War where when the character says we'll lose and the other one says we'll lose together too. And that gets referenced in an argument, I think, in like Infinity War. I didn't know that line came from this movie. That's the kind of nice thing, was like rewatching those movies first, where it's like I'm going to these ones and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing the pieces kind of all come together. There's a part when everyone's getting mind controlled by Scarlet Witch, and then Hawkeye, because he was like mind controlled at the beginning of like the original Avengers, which I found kind of funny, and then he almost gets mind controlled here, and then like stabs her with one of his arrows and mentions of like he doesn't want to get mind controlled again. I thought that was nice. He's like the only one that doesn't end up I think getting mind controlled. But yeah, everyone having their like freaky hallucinations about their past was kind of cool. Where it's like people they recognize and social locations, but like things are going wrong. I mean, not as like freaky or like spooky as it like could have been, but you know. And I like that we get to see some of Black Widow's backstory as well, of like her training and graduation procedure and stuff, which she ends up talking about later. Like there's this part when she's talking to Bruce because they're kind of a bit romantically interested in each other, and she mentions about like not being able to have kids because of a procedure done to her, and she has like tears in her eyes, and I felt so sorry for her. But it was nice to get to see some of her backstory because she, you know, she's one of the characters with this that didn't get a movie. I mean, it's still weird to me she like eventually does sort of get a movie, but it's after Endgame, so her character's she's already dead, so then it's like the other people that are related to her, so it's like about her, but it's not her from what I remember anyway. Actually I might be wrong. I did watch that movie, I just can't really remember it. But I mean, I just wish she'd gotten a movie like sooner. I guess I just really like Scarlett Johansson in this role. Iron Man, he gets to use that like super huge suit to fight the Hulk at one point. I think it's the one that gets used in Infinity War. That was pretty cool to see. They end up going to Hawkeye's house as a safe house. I thought it was kind of sad, but also makes sense. I mean, I keep forgetting the Avengers are basically just like, you know, like coworkers fighting people and stuff as this team, where I don't think any of them except Natasha knew that like Clint had a family or this house in like the countryside or whatever. So I knew this was the movie where Vision ends up getting created. Kind of nice to see how that ends up happening, because I never really knew, where it starts off with like Ultron wanting like he refers to it as like a living body, but basically more of like an android body, because for like the entire movie he's in like a big heavy metal body that just looks kind of weird. Not like weird. I thought the design of it was cool actually. But yeah, he ends up building the body that Jarvis ends up getting put into, which like eventually creates Vision and stuff. I think the one thing I'm still kind of confused about that, maybe because I just wasn't paying enough attention, was like, you know, they end up putting the Mind Stone in like Vision's head and stuff. I still don't understand how they ended up getting the Mind Stone or where it came from. I probably can just like Google that though. Hold on, sorry, my notes isn't really scrolling. I do like that the twin characters, they end up joining the Avengers. It doesn't take like too late into the plot for that, which was cool, because then you get to see them all like fight together at the end, where it's revealed where like Ultron wants to kill humanity and they're like, wait, we were supposed to just kill the Avengers, so they end up kind of trying to switch sides. There's a part where they're chasing down Ultron's like truck or whatever. I thought that would be kind of more fun, but I thought it was just okay. But then it was cool that they do have to stop like a runaway like trolley train or whatever at some point. I didn't even notice like Black Widow getting kidnapped by Ultron at one point, and the characters are talking, and I couldn't even tell if they realized that she just wasn't there. The part when Vision ends up being born was pretty cool, where the characters are getting into like a physical fight over it, and then Thor ends up electrocuting the pod that has Vision's body, and it kind of reminded me of like Frankenstein, and this whole thing of his creation being of like he came out in a way that they didn't intend to happen. So then he ends up having a conversation about that with Ultron, which was a scene I actually really liked. Like at the end, Vision's the one that like obliterates Ultron with the Mind Stone, and it's cool. It's like a very quick thing. It's not in a way that's like he's getting the final hit in this big fight. They're just like talking about being artificial intelligences and humanity being doomed and stuff. I thought that was a pretty good scene, especially because Vision mentions like as soon as he's born something of like not actually wanting to kill Ultron, just thinking he's like unique, but being like, okay, I kind of have to kill this guy, it's gonna hurt people and stuff. Um, and then Hawkeye giving Scarlet Witch the pep talk about deciding if she wants to be an Avenger was also pretty good. I noticed, I mean, I know her brother ends up like dying in this movie, but I noticed even way before that she was kind of being given more screen time anyway. So I feel like even if I didn't know about what happens to him and it just ends up being her, like let's say I'd never seen any of these before, I would have just assumed she would have been the more important character anyway. And then it isn't really a lot of fighting because there's like Ultron has all of these like robot clones, as I'll call them. There isn't actually too much fighting with that. A good chunk of the movie ends up actually being the Avengers like saving people when they're trying to evacuate the city, which I thought was pretty nice too. So it isn't just like them fighting people, but then it also kind of, that whole bit just kind of goes on for like way too long in my opinion. But then once all of them are together, the Avengers, and they're having to fight the like robot clones at once, that was pretty cool. The music was pretty heroic too. I feel like it was almost kind of trying to recreate, you know, that part in the first movie where you have that like iconic shot of the camera spinning around the original six and they're fighting everybody and you have the Avengers theme. I don't think the Avengers theme was playing here at that particular moment, but I feel like it was kind of probably supposed to remind you of that scene, but still, it's pretty cool. I don't mind. I actually had forgotten how Quicksilver did die, though. I just remember this was the movie where he's introduced and dies, but I didn't remember anything else. But I thought the way it was done was kind of interesting, where Hawkeye has to go and save this like one kid. It's not like an important character or anything, it's just this like random child, and then I think he's getting like shot at or something, and then he realizes he's not being shot, and you see that Quicksilver is like full of bullets, you know. And then I like that because of that, you know, his sister ends up getting pissed and she finds Ultron and literally removes, he has like a metal heart or like heart-shaped thing inside of him and just like pulls it out, and she's like, yeah, do you want to feel my pain or whatever. It kind of reminds me of you know, later on with Endgame, where she goes to try to fight Thanos and she's like, oh, you took everything from me, and he's like, I don't even know who you are. And then they have this whole thing where the city ends up falling. It's kind of funny to me the way it plays out, where I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, of course it happens this way, where like they get everyone evacuated and they've killed, I think, like almost all of Ultron, and then one of his like dying clone corpses touches the thing that causes this entire city to like fall out of the sky at like the last possible moments, and I'm like, yep, of course it has to happen that way. So then they have to pull another one of those things of like Iron Man has to do like a really big heroic action at the end of one of these movies. I was gonna say, I wonder if that's a recurring thing, and then I realized that the next Avengers movies are Infinity War and Endgame, which literally ends with him sacrificing himself to save the world. So he does that in like 3 out of 4 of these movies. And yeah, then everyone kind of goes their separate ways, I think, and Thor ends up leaving to try to go back to Asgard, which I'm assuming, you know, leads back to Thor Ragnarok. Not that that is like the next movie after this one, it's not, it's just I'm specifically watching the Thor movies and the Avengers movies only at this point. So that's the next one for me, which luckily I got on DVD, so I should be good. And I like that one, which I'm glad, because again, I did not like Thor the Dark World, so it'll be nice to have like a fun Thor movie again. I noticed with the credits, I actually really liked the art in the credits where it's like showing this giant kind of ceramic looking sculpture of the characters like fighting and stuff. That was pretty cool. Did not know that Danny Elfman did the music for this movie. I think that's pretty neat. I was kind of surprised by that. And then I already mentioned about the end credit scene with Thanos. I'm kind of curious how many of these movies have some kind of end credit scene related to Thanos, or if it's just like the Guardian and Thor movie, or not Thor, I'm sorry, Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers, or if it's in others, because there's other movies, you know, like Thor the Dark World, where it's like references about the Infinity Stones and stuff, because they got to start building all of that. But I'm wondering how many are just like Thanos specifically in there, you know, which he did look better. I don't think he had the like spooky glowy eyes. He looked like a little easier on the eyes to look at this point, so that's good, even though he's only on screen for like 5 seconds basically. But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on this. I thought it was pretty good. I will probably watch it again at some point if I can, even if I gotta go back to my aunt's house, because I have an aunt that has Disney Plus and she lets me like go over there, and I'll spend sometimes like the whole day just watching stuff, and that's pretty chill. So I'm like trying to take advantage of that now that I'm trying to track a bunch of these down. I mean, not saying I'm gonna go over there so much that I'm gonna watch like all of the Marvel movies, but I'm just trying to go for the ones I'm trying to watch right now. So I'll get to do that for some other movies too. We'll see. All right, thanks for watching. Bye bye.